The Baltimore Ravens are looking for their first head coach in 18 seasons. And there's one that makes just a little bit too much sense and scares the living daylights out of me. And we're going to discuss who that is up next here on No Buts About It. What's up, everyone? It's Josh here with No Buts About It. And we're going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens and Klint Kubiak and why I think they could be a match made in heaven or hell if you're a fan of another AFC North team, such as myself. Before we get into that, though, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss anything we put out. That NFL coaching cycle is in full swing, and we're going to be covering it right here. So let's get into who is Klint Kubiak first, because if we don't know who he is, we don't know why he is a good match for the Ravens. So first, Klint Kubiak is the son of four-time Super Bowl champion Gary Kubiak. Gary notably was an assistant coach with three of those Super Bowls. He was an offensive coordinator for, I believe, two of them, and a head coach for the Denver Broncos in 2015 when they won with Peyton Manning in that insanely good defense. But point is, Klint has been around his dad. He's been around good football teams. He's been around the NFL for a while. He has seen what it takes to win. He has spent 12 seasons as an NFL assistant coach and 16 seasons as a coach altogether. He also spent some time at the college level. He was the 2023 49ers passing game coordinator, and they were fourth in net passing yards that season. That was Brock Purdy's second year, and he really kind of helped develop Brock Purdy into the type of quarterback that we know him to be now. And he had done some stuff before that, obviously. But I really feel like these two positions are the most important, other than the Seahawks, which we will get into this in a second. But the New Orleans Saints in 2024 was also important. He was offensive coordinator there. And I think that this is a very key point because, yes, the Saints offense wasn't great that year. Derek Carr played 10 games before he ultimately ended up retiring, or 10 games before he ultimately ended up retiring. He was stuck with Jake Hayner and Spencer Rattler. However, Alvin Kamara had his second best yards per game, and I believe his also career yards high, a career high yards. I cannot talk this morning. Anyway, though, now Klint Kubiak is the Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator. So, what is he doing in Seattle? Well, the Seattle Seahawks offense is one of the best in the NFL. They have 5,973 total yards, averaging 351.4 yards per game, which is the eighth best in the NFL. Most importantly, they are extremely efficient. They average nearly 6 yards per play, which is tied for fourth with Buffalo and Dallas, which Dallas did not make the playoffs, but they had an extremely good offense this year. So don't let that kind of trick you. Buffalo as well has a very good offense. They are third in the NFL in points per game with 28.4. And I included this little fun fact here because I think this is going to be very important to the Baltimore hiring process, or at least it should be. Klint Kubiak runs 12 personnel 27.39% of the time. That means that he has one running back and two tight ends. The Baltimore Ravens love to run 12 personnel. That's something that Lamar Jackson is used to. To put that in perspective, though, of how much the Baltimore Ravens love to run this, the Seahawks are 12th with 27.39%. The Baltimore Ravens are third. They run 12 personnel 35.93% of their plays. Where I think the differential is, though, the Seattle Seahawks, when they run 12 out of 12 personnel, when they add that second tight end, they're extremely efficient. The Seahawks have added almost 57 estimated points per this season. They are adding points every time they go into 12 personnel. It is insane. That is EPA, so that is estimated, but the point still stands. They are extremely good at running 12 personnel, and they know when to run those plays as well. So, why does all of that matter? Well, John Harbaugh was the Baltimore Ravens head coach for 18 seasons, and now he's not. And he has simultaneously become the most sought after head coaching candidate, while the Baltimore Ravens have become the most sought after head coaching position. And Klint Kubiak, I would venture to say, is the second most sought after head coaching candidate. He has interviews with, I believe, every team, if not, he might just be missing one that hasn't officially said they're going to be interviewing him. He might be tied with Kevin Stefanski in terms of desire for head in terms of head coaching interviews, but the point is, this is a guy that NFL teams want. NFL teams want Klint Kubiak. And the Baltimore Ravens are set up very well for a guy like Klint Kubiak already. The Baltimore Ravens need to keep Lamar Jackson happy. They need to run an offense he is familiar with, something he is going to like to be in. The Baltimore Ravens' identity for a very long time has been defense, and it can still remain that. But the Baltimore Ravens do have a duty and have shown they are invested in Lamar Jackson and what he likes. Klint Kubiak should love Lamar Jackson. In fact, Klint Kubiak should be like a 10-year-old kid playing Madden, controlling Lamar Jackson, because their offenses go together so well. Remember, Klint Kubiak has been under Kyle Shanahan, and that shows in his offensive schemes. He loves wide zone schemes. He loves to move the offensive line horizontally, which allows for quarterback keepers. It allows for bootlegs. It also opens up play action. These are all things that Lamar Jackson excels at. Think about the 49ers offense. Think about how much the Kyle Shanahan is able to do with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. Now, the Baltimore Ravens have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. That was something that Baltimore fans were bringing up. Why aren't we using Derrick Henry more? Now, I will say the Seahawks and the Ravens are actually tied for third in the NFL for rushing attempts per game. But how can we use Derrick Henry more efficiently? And I think that's something Klint Kubiak would be able to do. I believe that Klint Kubiak's offense with Lamar and Derrick Henry would be an absolute nightmare for linebackers, because Lamar is very good at tricking linebackers with his eyes. He's very good at making people miss. He's very elusive. And that is something that defenses struggle with in tackling him. You add Derrick Henry to that mix, and you have to pick your poison. Then you add Klint Kubiak to that mix, who specializes in running this type of offense, and it's just perfect. These Baltimore Ravens games are just going to become shootouts every single time, and they're going to have force offenses to score more points than they are able to. And it could literally come down to just who has more possessions per game, because the efficiency with which Klint Kubiak calls an offense is insane. That, on top of the fact that the Ravens already have an in with Kubiak. Remember, Mike Macdonald is the head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. He was the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. If I am the Baltimore Ravens, before bringing Klint Kubiak in for an interview, I'm immediately calling Mike and saying, hey, what's this guy like? What type of players? You know, Mike, maybe he doesn't give you a ton of information because he is the head coach of another team, but I would at least try. I'd put a feeler out there. You have that connection. There is a connection there. Mike Macdonald is familiar with the Ravens. Klint Kubiak is familiar with Mike Macdonald. That helps you, I feel like. Now, why would Klint Kubiak not be the Baltimore Ravens head coach next season? Ultimately, I think it really just comes down to age. Klint Kubiak's only 38 years old, which there is a youth movement in the NFL. Keep that in mind. Guys like Liam Cohen this year are, killing it. First year as a head coach in Jacksonville. Um, Dave Canales in Carolina has also been doing a very good job. Sean McVay is kind of the face of the youth movement in the NFL, even though he's been a coach for almost a decade now. But he's never had that head coaching experience. That might be something that the Ravens, who historically have loved to keep their head coaches for a long time, that may be something that kind of worries them and steers them away from Klint Kubiak, but I don't think it necessarily should. The other thing is that defensive identity we talked about before. That's kind of what you think of with the Ravens. Now, there is another guy that the Baltimore Ravens have said they're interviewing, former Baltimore Raven himself, Anthony Weaver. He's currently the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. He's been in a few head coaching cycles. I believe the Saints brought him in last year and a few other teams as well. I could see the Baltimore Ravens going with Anthony Weaver because he matches that defensive identity more, and he's also more familiar with the organization than what Kubiak would be. However, I will say I think there is something to be said about where the team is now. And like I said, the team is focused on Lamar. They have invested in Derrick Henry. They didn't bring in Derrick Henry for the offense to not be spectacular. You just don't do that. Would Anthony Weaver be a fantastic head coach? Probably. He's got a fantastic mind, but the fact is the NFL is going towards offensive minds. It's going towards younger guys. And I think Klint Kubiak matches that more. Furthermore, the Baltimore Ravens have shown that they don't necessarily need a defensive minded coach to have a really good defense. John Harbaugh is not a defensive minded guy at all. He was actually one of the rare head coaches who came up through the special teams ranks. So the Baltimore Ravens shouldn't necessarily be worried about that. They had success for years under a special teams guy. They had great defenses for years under a special teams guy. So that's not necessarily a thing that you need to focus on. And I really think that if the Baltimore Ravens want to open up their offense more, they would bring in Klint Kubiak, who's going to bring those Shanahan style wide zone concepts, play action, bootleg, quarterback keepers to this Lamar Jackson offense and make it a borderline Madden offense that is going to take a lot of the pressure off of Lamar as well, because that type of offense relies a lot on yards after catch. So he's not going to have to make these deep throws. He's going to be able to just, get it to Zay Flowers. And because the offense or the defense is so spread out, Zay Flowers can make moves. Rashad Bateman can make moves. Whoever you bring in on that offense to replace Isaiah Likely, if you don't extend him, is going to be able to make moves. You just extended Mark Andrews. You're investing on offense. So bring in a guy who is going to, capitalize on that. And I think Klint Kubiak will do that to the best of all the head coaching candidates currently. That being said, as a Bengals fan, I hope I'm completely wrong here and they completely mess up this hiring process. However, let me know what you think down below. If you're a Ravens fan, even better. Let me know if you think Klint Kubiak would be a good coach for you guys. Let me know who you think should be the Baltimore Ravens' next head coach. And as always, we appreciate everyone who supports us in any way, whether that's a like, a comment, or a subscription. Share the video. And until next time, go do something nice for someone.